Hi. So, a couple weeks ago, Don and I and Mark and a few other people had a conversation about reconciliation writ large, reconciliation and how it works when countries try it. I waxed eloquent about the Marshall Plan and how it made enemies into friends. And Don asked several of us to talk about reconciliation and asked me to summarize our conversation, and that's what this is. The Marshall Plan, the way I heard it growing up, was a plan to rebuild the war-torn economies of Western Europe after World War II, including the enemy countries of Germany and Italy. This exists in stark contrast to the Treaty of Versailles' war reparations at the conclusion of World War I. And I was really moved by the United States' impulse to make friends out of enemies. The way I heard it, this was one of the primary reasons that Europe developed and became what it is today. Both Germany and Japan are some of the United States' strongest allies, as contrasted to what happened after World War I, when that's been cited as one of the primary reasons Europe was pulled back into war 13 years later. So before giving this talk, I thought I'd better get my facts straight, and I did a little reading. Like most things, the truth is more complicated. Japan wasn't actually part of the Marshall Plan. It and other Asian countries received money through grants that were similar to the Marshall Plan, but not part of the plan itself. The plan's mandate was to rebuild Europe. More money was given to Britain and France than to Germany. And many economists have contended that while the plan may have speeded recovery was already underway. But what virtually no one disputes is this. After World War II, the United States gave financial aid to its enemies, its former enemies, to help them get back on their feet. And in doing so, made friends out of enemies. It did so in stark contrast to the victors' treatment of their foes after World War I and the way victorious countries had treated their enemies for hundreds of years prior to that. The term Marshall Plan has become a generalized term for offering succor to a defeated foe. Well, what are the lessons we can draw from this? Well, in my opinion, there are a number of them. First of all, reconciliation is the opposite of revenge. It requires a generosity of spirit that Christ commands of us. For example, Matthew 5:44, "But I say unto you, pray for your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." Reconciliation requires relationship. We can't reconcile to strangers. In fact, we can't even begin to reconcile unless we understand the person or group we're trying to reconcile with. This, I think, is vital to remember as we figure out how to move forward from the political events of the past year, 4 years, well, frankly, 40 years. Reconciliation also involves forgiveness. But while it involves forgiveness, it isn't a blanket forgiveness of all wrongs. Even while the Marshall Plan was put in place, the Nuremberg trials took place, and 24 Nazis were charged with war crimes and crimes against humanity. As an aside, let me mention that those trials, conducted in an atmosphere of retaliatory outrage, remain to this day a sterling example of the rule of law over justifiable outrage. In fact, 3 men were acquitted. So it involves forgiveness, but it has to be a forgiveness tempered with understanding. Reconciliation also involves sacrifice. The United States had given and given to the war effort. Ordinary Americans had gone without, rationed domestic supplies in order to support their troops overseas. Yet despite this, We gave billions, in today's dollars, about $200 billion to rebuild a world devastated by war. On a smaller scale, personal reconciliation also requires sacrifice. Maybe not in terms of financial resources, but in time, patience, and most especially, our pride. Finally, one can't really reconcile by oneself. You can offer an opportunity to reconcile. Reconciliation comes with no guarantees. One can offer the hand, but can't make the other person take it. Reconciliation that's done with an expectation of reward or an advantage isn't reconciliation, it's manipulation. As such, reconciliation is something we do because it's the right thing, because it makes us the people we want to be, because it's righteous and good in our God's sight.